I'll concede your point just for brevity. But
What? Brevity? We don't do that around here. It's probably
No.
Citrus, or what is a Capital One Bowl? It used to be Citrus Bowl, right?
oh
Yeah,
my
Capital
God,
One.
dude, where have you been?
I just like the real name.
It hasn't been the Citrus Bowl since like what 2002?
What was your highlight side dish from Thanksgiving?
Oh gosh, Scotch.
This is the Buck Around, the podcast devoted to all things Wisconsin Badger football from a fan perspective. Featuring your hosts, Richard Branch and Maxwell Brusky.
And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Buck Around. Welcome back to episode 331 of the Buck Around. It's been a minute. We had a bye week. I am one half of the Buck Around, Richard Branch, and I am joined, as always, by this is what I was looking up right before we hit the record button, Max, my discordant colleague.
Discordant.
Maxwell Brusky. Because I think you and I are going to disagree.
Discord?
Yeah, we're not sowing discord, but we do have a disagreement, I think,
Okay.
going into this one. But I'll be curious to see. As we say, everybody, this is real. This isn't rehearsed. We haven't discussed this game yet.
No, we have not. And
But I'm
I
excited
think
to see.
For a lot of the season, we've been in concordance.
I was going to say harmony.
Yeah, well, let's try to keep it the chord
Yeah, I do like that.
concordance, right?
But
Oh, gosh.
yeah, so I am interested to talk about this game today. The first, West Coast swing in the Big Ten for the Badgers. A bit of a cultural experience. Our reporters on the ground were there.
Odd to say too, conference opener.
Conference opener in in the LA Coliseum. Something you don't get
Yeah.
to say very much.
No.
A big shout out, and you'll hear it in the talk around momentarily, to correspondents on the ground, West LA Nate, and interestingly enough, Ed from Philly, who were both there. You get to listen to West LA Nate descend into his cocktails because the calls get a little less logical as the day goes on, but he does update you mostly on what he's drinking, which is great.
I will say this though, like I didn't catch Ed from Philly's, quite his schedule or his plan of the day. But I got some text from West LA Nate from the the official Badgers tailgate.
Yep.
That had like the Bloody Mary bar, eggs, bacon, bratwurst.
He'll
So
tell
he had
you all
he had
about
the whole thing. You know what I mean? So he went from like the classic tailgate from Bloody Marys
Right.
into beer, into cocktail. You know what I mean? It was a day's worth of stuff. So I mean, setting the final score aside or the second half aside, I mean that was a life well lived for sure.
I think it was an experiential day, if we will.
Yes.
But I have to say, between him and Ed letting us know everything going on in the stadium, that was joyous. It counterbalanced everyone else's anger. Well, we'll just see. Why don't we just hit play and everybody can hear sort of the tenor of the fan base before we get into this game.
Okay, here we go.
Ryan from Seattle. Luke Fickle. Mike Tretzel. And Longo. Do you have anything to say, girl?
No.
Okay.
Louise from Nashville.
Steve from Portland.
Hey, this is Ed from Philly.
This is John in San Francisco.
West LA Nate reporting live from the Wisconsin tailgate here on the USC campus. Spirits are high. Everyone's excited. That might just be the Bloody Mary bar, the open bar, and the buffet talking, but optimism is high. We were walking in past the USC band, flashbacks of their special with Fleetwood Mac. Speaking of rumors are true that sell liquor inside of LA Coliseum. I think the offensive line really good today. I think the offensive line is the strength of this team.
As we entered the stadium, we all consumed a number of drinks. Decent selection here at LA Coliseum. One selection that was not selected was the $28 margarita. We just scored a touchdown. A 60-yard touchdown. In the second quarter, Wisconsin tied 7-7. Spirits are high in the Wisconsin section. Good vibes are happening. We are about 44 beers and cocktails in. That could be part of the reason why we have so much optimism. We actually look really good.
Shaquem Thomas, man. Good Lord. Didn't we think this guy was going to be like the defensive MVP of this team? I don't even want to see him on the field anymore.
Braden Locke
is not going to develop into the guy.
So Longo must spend all week planning out 2 drives meticulously drawn up like a symphony. And then once those 2 drives are done, he just spins a wheel on the sidelines and randomly chooses which plays to run.
Even if they under center, Joe Brunner gets blown up so bad.
Not going well, and that damn song is to be really, really annoying by the time this game ends.
All the former players now coming out, it just annoys me. It's like, don't you want your program to be really good? Braylon Allen coming out and saying what he is, just come out and say it. If it was this bad or anything, I mean, we all want to know.
31-21, we have issues, and that song is annoying. On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Go Badgers.
Well, there you have it.
I'm very happy that we had an appearance of Miss Go Football herself.
I love it. I know.
Welcome back.
Go Football. Mrs. Go Football.
Who, by the way, have you ever referred to your wife as girl?
Every now and again. Usually it's woman or lady. Like, hey, lady, what the hell are you doing?
All right.
Or come on, woman.
Because I was like, what? I'm going to be honest. I listened to that voicemail a few times and I'm like, what are they doing? What's going on there? Like, what was happening that we had that sort of like tude?
I don't know. I might now. after it's usually, hey, lady.
Yeah, but
I've done. All right, time out, sister.
Yeah, but that's exactly. Like I was like, wait, is she on the coaching staff and we don't know?
That was cracking me up.
But yeah, so again, thank you, West LA Nate, and thank you, Ed from Philly, for all of your insights and bringing it this week.
Yeah, and like I said, I texted West LA Nate. We were texting each other before while the calls, during the calls, whatever. And I mean, it definitely helped I was already hyped. I'm already like shaking. You know what I mean? I'm so cranked up and nervous and happy and joyous. And, it's these 2:30 games, you get a lot of time to stew about it. And yeah, I mean, it really helped my hype factor. It was really awesome. So West LA Nate, thank you very much.
All right. So I guess without further ado, let's get to it, Max. You have a Badger game where a tale of two halves. Badger goes into halftime up 21-10. You're like, wow, look at these guys. They're actually putting something together. And then it ends up 38-21. I think the easier... I mean, how do we want to do this? Like just each side of the ball? That's kind of the way we organized our notes, but I don't know another way to go about it at this point.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine.
Let's start with the defense because it's easier.
Yeah, that's fine.
What do you like? What happened Saturday that's a wrong way to ask the question. What insights? What did your views? What did your perception of the defense change after? Like, what about it changed for you in any way after Saturday?
You know what's weird? I don't know. I actually feel even better about it than I did going in. Game, and you watched the game on the normal coverage, right?
Yep.
So Danielson and Nessler. I mean, and man, anytime I can get Nessler on a call, I'm a happy guy. He's one of my favorites for sure. But they made a point about how many snaps. You're like through the third quarter, and they're already on the field in LA. Where it's got to be 80 plus on the field, at least 85 on the field, where they've already played more snaps than they've played all season. Now I get it. They're as in shape as you could possibly be. And I don't think that the strength and conditioning or anything with Wisconsin under Brady Collins lacks anything, right? But even still, when you're on for that amount of time and you're getting like no breaks and you have momentum issues, right? Like your offense isn't helping you out at all in the second half. Even a good defense Alabama's defense is gonna have some breakdowns after a while, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I feel pretty good about it. I think you posted our little text conversation, right?
Right.
Don't you think like after those first couple drives that they started getting some pass rush that was effective?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I put an asterisk on it, but yes.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, and I'll elaborate. You can elaborate on your asterisk for sure. But they did do that.
Yes, they did.
And here's the thing, like if you watched, this is part of what made me so sad. like, watching the game, as the game went on, is there was a pass last night with Josh Allen where he's like drifting out of bounds. He throws the thing downfield. You were probably watching it, and you saw that one where he's like flying out of bounds. Like I think he's almost in the air when the ball leaves his hand as he's going out of bounds, and the ball goes 40 yards downfield. Guy catches it, gets down to inside the 5-yard line. Like that's the kind of stuff Miller Moss and his receivers were doing. Like that's what talent does, especially on those third downs. I mean, those third down conversions had a couple really, really, really impressive catches. Those are Sunday catches and Sunday throws. So, I mean, if they're going to make plays like that, and how many times even during the broadcast is you can't defend it better than that, right? Like that came up several times. There wasn't a lot of really mistakes on that I saw anyway. I'm sure there's a couple of them, but I mean, as far as that goes, that was USC's guys making plays. But moreover, this is the disappointment is why can't we have a quarterback like Miller Moss, like ever? Like ever, and it's somebody else made the point too. It's like as the second half went on, Lincoln Riley and that offense and the play calling and the making plays just got better and better and better. And that never happened. It didn't happen with the Badgers, but I feel like that's something happens and they just get stuck in a second gear. You look like you don't agree. I mean, they were making plays and the play calls were, we can talk about the 4th and 1 that they had Wohler not missed the tackle. Had he made that tackle, probably still would have been a first down. Right. So that's what made me sad. But as far as the defense goes, I think it's pretty good. I think you saw some guys that were coming along too. I mean, for Xavier Lucas, he was on the field for a lot and they picked on him a lot, but he's getting picked on by dudes like that's some iron sharpens iron kind of stuff, right? I mean, he has the ability, I think, eventually to get better at that stuff. Mm-hmm. I would think, but he was going against some of the best guys in the conference.
I mean, so to piggyback on you, yeah. So USC played 80. They had 82 offensive snaps that counted. Plus, I think 4 lost to penalty because I noticed like if you look at the snap counts, like Wohler and Zachman played every snap at 86. I'm pretty sure that's every snap. So that includes 4. Again, wiped by penalty. The Badgers, I think prior to that, it was something, I don't think they had, I think one game they had 60 snaps. It might have been Alabama on defense, but without pulling it up, I'm not going to slow us down, but it's a significant increase in snaps. I think also the fact that Max Lofi, who basically has been an anchor in the secondary for the first 3 games of the season, like a real surprise piece being out. Oh, yeah. He did not play a snap. They intimated in the broadcast that he played, but I went back and I didn't see him on the field once, and he didn't get a snap count credit.
He was still in the 4th quarter.
And
they showed him again on the bike in the 4th quarter.
Correct. So he did not play a snap. So personnel usage was sort of thrown out the window because Austin Brown ended up playing 80 snaps. And I promise you that was not the plan going in. And on top of that, you had guys like Xavier Lucas, like RJ Delancey, who no doubt were asked to play more snaps than they should have or were planned to. And they're covering, their receivers are like small forwards. Jacoby Lane and Deuce Robinson.
Jacoby Lane in particular and Deuce Robinson.
Big boys.
I think they're 6'4", 6'5".
So you're dealing with 6'4" and 6'6". And, Austin Brown gave up a 30-yard reception, but the ball's just where it's got to be, and he can outreach. Lucas, same thing in the end zone. Forkerine gets beat in the end zone, same way. Forkerine gets beat on that 3rd down completion on the edge, but that wasn't anything to do with height. It was just a well-placed ball, and there's not much you could do there. So I thought the secondary played well.
One observation with the secondary, though, is that nobody Ricardo Hallman's name never gets mentioned. I feel like nobody throws his way. He does really have whatever he's covering. It's not part of the play, which, okay, that's good. But it means your other guys have to make a play. But he's he's not going to record a lot of stats except for snaps. Just because his guy seems to be out of the play.
Yeah, but also the only pushback pushback I'd put on that is a lot of times he's rotating into that effectively high safety spot. Like if you watch, if there's pre-snap motion, a lot of times it's like a wheel where they're rotating off, which they want him to do because that tends to be where he gets his interceptions. Like that's where he causes turnovers. If you think back to last year, most of the time it's in zone coverage. I mean, so that does happen. But also, I do think it's notable, he played 16 fewer snaps than Forkerine. So Forkerine is there. The part of that also, I think, is they know Hallman can't match up physically there. So yes, he's there, but I think they say we need the 3.5 to 4 inches that Forkerine has at corner and Lucas has at corner. And even, I hate to say it, maybe Delancey to some degree to sort of pick our spots with Hallman so he doesn't just get out verticaled.
Well, and that's kind of been a trend for the season. I mean, he's usually around like 3/4 of the defensive snaps too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether that's for the reason you said against Western Michigan or South Dakota, I don't know. But he's been at 3/4 of the defensive snaps for most of the season.
Yeah.
For all 4 games.
So I do think I think the secondary, quite frankly, played well. Like the game you compare this to is that Penn State Big Ten title game, right? Like that's the one it makes you think of.
In so many ways, yes.
But I felt like the execution from the secondary in this game was better than that one. I really do.
No, I'm not going to disagree. No, I'm not going to disagree. And as much as they did, like the receivers made plays and Miller Moss made throws. Like they were as good as you've seen an opponent play.
But I also don't think Miller Moss was maybe as lights out as people think. Do you know, I mean, Braden Locke had a higher yards per attempt than Miller Moss.
I know.
Like
I
they made them sustain drives.
They did. That's also what put him on the
did.
field for a lot of snaps, especially as against Alabama, right?
Correct. And they did do that. So it works. And in terms of what I mean by that is USC's offense functioned. They just functioned at a very high level because they were forced to sustain. So kudos to them. The pressure thing, I will say, number one, best game of the season for Elijah Hills. Without a doubt. Also notable, I personally think, in terms of snap counts, he had the most snaps of anybody on the defensive line. So he wasn't the starter. That was still Neal and Barton. But as the game went on and it became quite clear that Elijah Hills is the only guy beating his man, he played more. And as the game, he maintained. So I'll give him credit again in a game where there was 82 counted snaps / 86, whatever you want to call them. He played 50. He played a lot of football. Neal played 42, Barton 37. The other interesting one, Brandon Lane, who I actually did see in the game, didn't really do much, but seemed to affect plays, played 27. So a guy came out of the woodwork there. The only thing I would throw a little bit of cold water on in terms of the defense, in terms of pressure, especially at the edge, Peterson showed, yes, they got to the quarterback, but USC's offensive line wasn't very good. And where they were getting to the quarterback on the edge tended to be where there was some kind of pull by the offensive line and a blocker, whether it be the lineman or a tight end, had to do some kind of reach block. And in more than one occasion, when Peterson is getting to the quarterback, he just wasn't touched because they couldn't get to him. Now you could say, that's a credit to him.
Agreed.
But
yeah, he was unblocked.
It was more the way it was drawn up.
Yep.
Out there, I also do think it's interesting. The snap counts really evened out because Pius had the most at 46. Peterson was second at 45. And then Lowry at 41. And then the one that I think really sticks out to me, and I think this trend line will continue, Aaron Witt played 40. Because as far as I'm concerned, at this point, Aaron Witt's the best outside linebacker they have. And
he is so good. I feel so bad that he's been out all this time because he is really good. I really enjoy him.
Well, I think either way, he is the best edge setter they have. He is not, we've said it before. I get it. He's not really much of a threat as a pass rusher, but for my money, he does enough out there to create a challenge for an opposing offense that it more than offsets it. As far as I'm concerned, he should be leading the team in snaps. And I think that may be coming. And I think with this team, and it's the same thing that carries over into the inside linebacker room, like Allegro and Curtis are playing more snaps. I mean, like Allegro played 21 this week, which is the most he's played. Yes, there were 82 defensive snaps, but his snap count is basically doubling. He's going from 10 a game to 20. They didn't double the number of defensive snaps they played. So proportionately or as a percentage, it's going up. Tackett Curtis played 19. If you asked me how many he played, I would have told you it was 35. Just because he felt far more impactful and present on the field than his snaps reflect. So I just think those guys are slowly going to keep creeping up. I mean, there's enough. I mean, we had it in the talk around people ready to kill Jaheim Thomas.
Oh, Jaheim had a bad game.
Yeah,
and he's not effective. I think the problem with Jaheim Thomas, though, is that he would come, he comes in with such high expectations, and I don't know whether they were justified or not. And I think that's fans were expecting a lot more, and I don't know if that's realistic, if that was realistic or not, but fans were expecting a lot more.
Well, I mean, look, he was brought in as a transfer. You let the starting inside linebacker go. He takes that spot, and then he's also being used as an edge rusher, which makes you say, oh, they think this highly of him. They have him basically playing multiple roles. No one else is doing that, right?
Right.
I mean,
I don't know that he will be anymore either.
I am very curious to see what happens there, whether this puts him in the Chateau Bow Wow. But my take from it's interesting to me, like my take from the defense in this game was that, like, I felt like I saw, okay, I'm starting to see where this thing goes, right? Because I was thinking about, like, here, let me read you this quote from Mike Tressel, because it's from last week when he had a media availability, and then think about what you saw this week, because I think it ties the defense together pretty well in my head. And he said, I wrote this down. I was very proud of myself for transcribing, by the way. I feel very official. So as we evolved here a little bit, I think we recognized the strength of our current roster and tried to play to those strengths as best we could. And that meant leaning a little bit more on what had been done here in the past because of the roster buildup. That, I should note, was talking about last year and then transitioning into this year. You see, this year, we've recruited a few different kinds of bodies and tried to play to their strengths. And as it evolves, I think you're going to see a little bit more of what I call front multiplicity, where you can see some of those different fronts that we ran at Cincinnati. But again, you have to identify who your best players are, you have to identify your roster, and you have to try to figure out how to put them in a position to play fast and play to their strengths. And I thought about that in reflection to what they kind of have been doing this year. And it's like, okay, I get the base nickel. That's what they know. But then I watch as you get into some of the third down plays now, maybe where you can play the young guys. But I look at guys like Allegro. I look at guys like Curtis. I'll be interested to see if we see him because he was questionable this week. If we see Heiberger next week.
Definitely. He did travel with him too.
He traveled.
So there's that. Yeah, I know.
Like, I am going to be curious to see if we start to see some of those bodies rotating in, because I feel like you're starting to see a little bit of the transformation, right? Like, I think you're starting to see a little bit of the adaptation there. Like, there is, even though it's far from, I mean, you have the issues on the defensive line, but like Dylan Johnson has played some snaps. So I think that's notable that you're starting to find some bodies there. They're going to need to find more, but at least I see the baseline.
He didn't this time, though.
He did not. Didn't play a snap.
That was kind of surprising. And I think he did travel with him, too, right?
He did. I think it was more Brandon Lane getting snap. I think that's where his snaps went. Yeah. Because you still had 7 snaps to Cade McDonald, but Dylan Johnson didn't play. I don't know the reason. I'd be curious to know, but there is a matchup there, or there is a thought process there that whatever it is.
I think so, too. Yeah.
What I mean by that is I don't read too much into it. So I do feel like after watching this defense, people really aren't upset about it, but I couldn't get upset about it.
There was as much roast in so many of the Twitter replies. Now I know it's Twitter replies and whatnot, or comments of like, fire Tressel and all this stuff. And I'm like, why? I don't get it. You're gonna get mad because like Alabama and USC put up a lot of points on them. Like, come on, man. I mean, especially Alabama, though. I mean, there was a couple of things in there. I think the Alabama, that might have been more frustrating in some parts than this, but I mean, this was frustrating because of the first half was so seemingly so good.
Well, I mean, I think it's, if you told me they were going to get 31 points, because obviously there's a pick six in there, 31 points on 82 snaps, I would say that's
against
good.
USC with those receivers and that quarterback, and a really good running back, by the way, too.
So I take it. I really would.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think we're very aligned.
All right. So far we are not discordant.
No discord yet.
So let's switch to the offense, because I do think that there's some different pieces at play. Other than, I mean, I don't know, where do you want to start? What do you want to do? I mean, do we just have a one sentence? Yes, the offensive line is still pretty good. Is there anything besides
I think we're good on that.
Okay,
yeah, I
done.
think we're good on that. Yeah,
check that one off our list.
Especially in pass protection.
Yeah,
and
I mean, they were legit.
The holes that Tyree Walker went through on the scoring play. Those were ones that I could have gone through.
So, aside from your touchdowns that you're scoring, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about Braden Locke?
I think we have to.
Okay.
Right? That's the obvious place to go. Yeah. How good did you feel in the first half?
How good did I feel? I was mostly just like more surprised than anything.
Okay. Yeah, me too.
I don't know that I would have argued that. I mean, if we're talking about Braden Locke, I don't know that in the first half I saw a whole lot out of Braden Locke. I mean, like, I wasn't feeling bad. Like, he didn't hurt him in the first half, but I mean, he wasn't doing anything. I mean, in the first quarter, let me look. What was he was 3 for 7 with the big pass, right?
Yeah.
So he had that nice touch ball.
But the big pass was a pretty big deal.
I mean, yes and no. Like, yes, it's a big pass. But to me, it was, okay, they got a one-on-one. They got the matchup they wanted. They executed. That's great.
Yes,
but
it is. Maybe that's a low bar, but it felt good.
Can you sustain something like teams give that up, right? Because you had it in the matchup. He had no help over there. It just, things lined up. You had, I mean, it was a really well-placed ball. Like, that was a very Braden Locke ball. It had that, that pitching wedge bend to it. Like, that was a touch, right? So yes, I totally agree. And then he had the other big one to Bryson Green. Mm-hmm. 2 nice balls. The rest of it, I mean, I think at halftime I think he had 12 passes at the half. I think he was like 7 for 12, something like that. The rest of it felt like there were several situations where he and receivers got frustrated with each other, which I think one of them was in the first half, where there was definitely, you are supposed to be here, and the receiver saying, no, I'm supposed to be there, and you're kind of left curious. But was he functional? Yes, in the first half. I guess that's my answer to you. Did I feel like he was like all world beater? No. But I guess what I mean by that is I don't take away that pass, those 2 completed passes, but I don't feel like I was watching a guy who felt comfortable and an integrated part of the offense. If that makes sense. I did not.
That's interesting. So
he looked like he was running and what I mean by that is I felt like they were keeping the playbook real thin. They were keeping the reads real simple. And that's why they had some of that early. And then once USC saw they were doing, they pretty much closed the door on what they could do.
Okay. I like it. I think that's really good. That explains my feeling better than I did, except for the fact that I did feel pretty good watching scoring plays and watching touchdowns on offense. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's more of a general proposition, but I don't know what I'm going to do with Braden Locke for the rest of the season.
I think
my head's going to explode, and I don't have there doesn't seem to be any like high end there.
I would agree with that.
And I know I'll make a play or two every now and again, but like if you're counting on him to win a game ever, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And I get it. He's a coach on the field and all that stuff and knows the offense really well, but like, come on, man, it's going to suck. and I don't mean it means they're going to lose every game. And I don't mean he's like not going to be effective or not going to have decent games, but there's no juice with this guy.
Well, he's not a plus player. I think
he's not a plus player. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm just exhausted without having plus players at the quarterback position.
I mean, I'm 80% of the way there.
For this freaking program.
I mean, I'm 80% of the way there. I'm not ready to say that yet. Like, I don't know that. I'm not done. I'm not writing off the year on him. Yeah, well, I'll give him one more week. I really will. I am curious to see him against a not superior opponent.
I'm not argue with that. No, I'm not going to argue with that.
But I don't think you're
see
wrong.
What you're saying there. Yeah.
I guess my point is, I don't think you're wrong. I'm just not quite ready to like stamp the paper, right?
Right. No, I mean, obviously it's in a different stratosphere, but like watching Georgia come back.
Yeah.
Like, and just watching that stuff. I mean, watching the Packers come back yesterday, and just watching like what a good like plus quarterbacks look like. And it's even I remember watching after the Alabama game in the bar in the Pitt West Virginia game was on.
Mm-hmm.
Like that quarterback isn't a household name, but the dude's like making plays, and it's just like that's like you can't even that's too much to expect.
So
And maybe Van Dyke would have done that, but like in the time that he played here, he didn't do that at all. He had a couple, like, what did you say, like 1 or 2 NFL throws, and then God only knows what would happen against Alabama. Well, and it's a bummer you didn't get to see it. And I thought Mordecai might have had some stuff like that, but even still, I never got that impression from Mordecai either.
No, but Mordecai was just more of the gamer type. I don't know how to describe.
Yeah. And I'm right, but it's not like you're throwing the ball 40 yards downfield to a guy who catches it, late in the game, or when it's desperation, when you need to move the ball, when you need to get a touchdown in 90 seconds, when you need to get a touchdown in 50 seconds, like that stuff is just, I don't feel like that's ever going to happen ever.
Well, they didn't believe that he was in that they had a guy in that game to do that because they still were relying on the run, pretty heavily in the fourth quarter. I mean, Tui Walker kept getting carries.
And actually, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I have a problem with Darian Dupree getting 4 freaking touches, and I have a problem with never seeing Dylan Jones if he's traveling, and I have a problem with swing passes to Jackson Aker. Sorry, but I do. But it's just, I feel like you'll never see that. If they're down in the fourth quarter by a touchdown or more, dude, the game's over. Forget it.
I think you might be right.
Yeah.
In this current iteration.
Sucks.
Yeah. This right now, they're not built to come back. By the way, to make you more angry.
Which is so lame. That's what I meant by like saying it was lame. Yeah. That's what I mean. It's so lame.
And to make you angry, it's 2 touches for Darian Dupree, not 4, just for the record. He had 2 in the first drive.
He was 4 snaps. He was on the field for just 2 touches.
And I think he was in that 30 formation that they were in, like the personnel group.
You're right. I think you're right. And when he carried the ball, there was some wiggle and some juice to it too.
Well, I think so. Here's the thing. I think their problem on offense right now, and this is my roundabout way of touching on shotgun on 4th down, which I really don't want to touch anymore because I just am tired by it. Like people are going to have their own things.
No, and the numbers are the numbers. Stop talking about it.
But
if you're going to do it, just don't do it. Like
everybody
in North America knew that that's what was going to happen because that's what was coming.
So here's where I think you're allowed to. Here's where I think there is a reasonable critique of the whole situation. Like the way that, because you've seen that play run several times and you saw USC run it and score a touchdown on it and show you like, oh, this is what it is. Because like if you watched Miller Moss, Miller Moss is not what I would term a mobile quarterback. Like, he's okay. I mean, he's like Tyler Van Dyke.
He's got good pocket presence and he has escapability, but he's not Mr. Design run to do.
His 40 is not going to blow you away. Right?
and they don't design runs for him.
So, well, they designed some zone
once
reads.
Or twice.
Exactly.
Yeah, fine.
So here's the thing. What did he do in that game? He pulled the ball twice. And what did that do? That kept, whether it was, Aaron Witt or Leon Lowry or Darrell Peterson or John Pius, that guy who is uncovered on the backside of the play, it keeps him frozen for 1 step.
Yep.
The reality is they are running. So on that 4th and 1, what are they running? They're sitting there in 12 personnel. They got the 2 tight ends on the left side, and they do that thing where on the snap, the tight ends come from the backside of the play and crash into the hole. But here's the thing, is what is it designed to do? You throw numbers there and you leave the backside linebacker uncovered, and you trust the backside linebacker on that shotgun snap is going to freeze for half a step, so that when you give that ball to Walker,
for 1 yard,
for it, because all you're looking to do is get a yard. Like, that's a play to get a yard and a half,
for
maybe
1 yard.
2. And that's all you got to do is freeze him so that by the time he comes across and he gets on the backside of that running back, he's already 2.5 feet down the field and falls forward for the yard, to your point.
Right.
But he only freezes if he thinks Braden Locke's going to hold the ball. They do not trust Braden Locke to hold the ball at this point. They are not doing that for whatever reason. All right. If you want to say that's bad judgment, if you want to say that's they don't trust him and there's good reason that they're not doing it, which I'm willing to lean to that right now. Like, I have a feeling like it's pretty clear that Tyler Van Dyke was the better quarterback, right? I mean, I think we can say that. Of the two options they had, Tyler Van Dyke was the better quarterback. They can say whatever they want about Wayne.
No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, no doubt, right? I also think they're probably a reasonable judge of, can this guy pull and run it in a way that we're comfortable with? It could be because they don't want to play Mabry Matoyer.
Right. Which I think that's reasonable, isn't it?
I think that's very reasonable because I'm pretty sure, and I was looking at this on my rewatch, I don't think Cole LaCrue traveled, number one.
He did not. It was the Spiros.
Exactly.
What's his name? I can't. Yeah,
not Spiro Agnew.
Not Spiro Agnew. He's deceased, I believe.
Yes. I think he's out of eligibility too. But so he traveled instead of LaCrue. Read into that what you will. They do not want to burn Matoyer's red shirt. Like, they really don't. And so I think that calculation is in there. And the other part of it, the simple reality, well, then go under center. They haven't run under center. They're not going to do it in 2 weeks. They're just not, right? It's not going to happen, but it's supposed to work because of that QB read. So they're stuck in a corner. Like, that's what's going on right there. That's why they have that issue on that. I mean, just go watch it again. Like, you can see it. I mean, aside from the fact that Joe Brunner got blown up on the play, which Lucas mentioned.
There was that too. Yeah, no, I know.
Even
I didn't
still,
rewatch it, but I've heard the commentary.
I think it's like 50-50. Walker might have gotten it still if the confluence of those two things don't happen. If the linebacker isn't already there when the tackle's hitting him, maybe he had enough to carry it forward. You don't know, but just it was the perfect storm, and it falls apart.
That's the thing, though. I mean, given all those limitations, or not limitations, but maybe parameters. Okay, given all that, like, can't you think of something else? like, can't you think of another way to do this? Isn't there something that you can leak a tight end out, pull the ball back, and just pop it over, pop pass, or whatever the hell it is? Like, that's the best you got, is that same damn play that you ran against Alabama that didn't work.
I wonder how much of it is, do they trust him on the read on an RPO there?
Well, here's the thing, though. If he's that smart, then yeah. I mean, if he knows the offense, then you would think. And you know what? Then if not, then I'm moving from parameters to limitations. Then, which makes me even more sad. Even I want to see not again play calling guy stuff, but if there was something where maybe it's a direct snap or something, or just something different. And I think, in a text conversation I was having, I think Carl, it's like, it's a broader point too. It's like Phil Longo's forgotten more about offensive football in general than I'll ever know. Like, it's like I felt about Chris those last couple years. I figured he'd have something else cooked up. Like, there's really, like, this is the best you got kind of stuff. Like, and it's just like, there's no guile. And you know what I mean? There's like no, especially if you're on the road in an upset. Like, I never got any feeling of like guerrilla warfare here. I never got that feeling that you gotta do something a little bit different. You gotta go outside the box a little. So, and I never get that from these guys. It's like, and to that end, it's like Chris part 2.
I guess it's not pushback.
Yeah.
But my suspicion is the conversation in that staff meeting during the week is, it is 4th and 1. What gives us the best chance to get a first down? This is what they thought. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. But I don't think those things aren't being considered. I think it's, given the limitations, which I think is the reality. Like, this offense has real limitations right now. And I don't think they're just centered on the quarterback.
Probably not.
And I think that's sort of the consensus. Well, this is what we have on the call sheet. And I think this is our best bet given what they are. And watching that game, I mean, USC was crashing hard the entire game from the outside. I don't know if this means they're going to maybe try to even if you just put it on film against Purdue this week, it's not Northwestern this week. Like if you put it on film against Purdue, the rest of the season, you can freeze that outside linebacker. And maybe they're not comfortable. They're comfortable doing that against Purdue if they get in the right situation up a little bit. Where the risk isn't something like, especially I think getting up on USC the way they did, they were playing to try to win. I mean, it's not that they were playing to lose it, but like they were trying to win that football game. I have zero doubt in my mind.
Yeah, agreed.
That they were saying this is for this week. What can we do?
And I'm like 100% totally down with that approach. And I still, even with this team, even with this staff, whatever, I still I watch these games and I think they have not just have a chance to win, but if they do this, and this, execute it properly, play sound football, and get a couple things to go their way, that they can win. I felt that way against Alabama. Okay. But that's where my head is. And that's where my attitude is. And I certainly felt that way this time. And it's just, just watched everything. It just unraveled. And I don't know, what do we do with Tyrell Henry?
So
he has nothing on offense.
That's where you get me to why did this team collapse? People are like, what happened in the second half? And I'm like, I don't think there's that much to it. USC stopped turning the ball over and Wisconsin started turning the ball over. That's it.
Does the fact that USC stopped turning the ball over take anything away from the first half for you? Because it doesn't for me. I know that I've heard that, or people have said that, and it's kind of like, well, it's like they spotted him, and I'm like, no, that's not what happened. Those are forced turnovers, and no, I disagree.
The punt,
it doesn't take anything away, and if you wanted to have the recipe for the upset is forcing the other team to turn the ball over.
Well, I mean, I would say Zachman's interception was a really impressive pick. That was a really
stud play.
That was a heck of a play. I mean, really heck of a play.
It's on Zachariah Branch too, right?
Yes.
Who does give some hideaway to Zachman, but nevertheless.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a 5'10" guy versus a big, but it was an athletic
borderline All-American player. Yeah,
correct. So heck of a play. The punt was just that was lucky, right? And that's why I don't disagree with people who say USC spotted points. I don't disagree that they spotted with incompetence there. And
I kept saying to Lindsay though, there's two things, right? You got to have a little bit of luck, which in the first half they most certainly did.
Yeah, they just burned through it all.
And here's the other thing: USC does not play sound football all the time.
Right?
They don't. They make mental mistakes constantly. They had plenty of penalties, and their offensive line is not that good. I mean, it's not good. Horrible, but it's mediocre. Okay, and it's not to the level of what you think of when you think of USC, specifically on the offensive line. I mean, there's guys playing on Sunday all over the place from USC. So there's that, but USC does not play sound football, and they took advantage of that in the first half, which is what you need to do.
Right. But you also can't
so it doesn't take anything
ball
away. But to your point, they stopped turning the ball over. I think moreover, you said it before though, is that whatever they started doing on defense, where is the freaking counterpunch? Where is okay, fine, they're going to take this away. This offense has none of that. And whether that's a play calling thing or a talent thing or a personnel thing or a scheme thing, whatever it is. I mean, that's lame. That's just lame. At this level of football, that's lame. And I feel like there was a time when it wasn't like that. And I don't think even it was like that under Chris, a lot of the times.
He got fired pretty much because of that. I would say the last 3 years of his career. It was
lame. No, those games were lame from the beginning. It wasn't it's just there was a lot of times where there was some kind of counterpunch there, and there were some adjustments that were discernible.
Okay. But, I think part of
it might be rose-colored glasses back.
Also, I think some of that is recency, and I would argue.
Yes.
And I sound like I'm trying to be some kind of apologist for Long Gun. I'm really not. I'm just more
I'm putting you in that position.
Well, I just think people are overreacting. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
two parts to this. And maybe, you know what? There are some things I think you can react to legitimately. And so maybe I'm not giving people enough credit. Maybe they're thinking of it this way. But like, first off, I think what they can do on offense as soon as they lose Tyler Van Dyke, it's pretty limited because they're still running the stuff that's sort of predicated on a bit of mobility out of the quarterback. Like they can't just that's what they've been practicing all fall, right? Like that's what they installed. So you can only go away from the install so much, and you have to do it over time, right? Because you've got the whatever it is, 20 hours a week that they get, and you've got to prep for your opponent and get in the best place to beat that opponent. You can't like just throw everything out and be like, well, we're just going to throw this game away to get it so we're ready for week 10 against Iowa, right? Like that doesn't really work. So I think there will be a migration over time. It's just how they allocate the time in practice. The bigger thing that I don't understand in terms of like some of the anger and the frustration was like, I feel like the consensus was this was a 7-5, 8-4-ish team.
Yeah.
And if you were in the 7-5 and 8-4 camp, you thought they were losing these games. Like this wasn't
There's
one of the
that too. No, I agree
wins.
with you.
So if that consensus existed, I feel like maybe it's just like the acute versus like the I don't know, like the specific loss versus like the season when you look at it as a whole, where you can sort of soften the rough edges and things like that. And like these things sting, but it's like the journey, if you end up at the same destination, the journey is whatever it is. The only thing I think maybe is fueling some of this, which I do think is legitimate if this is sort of like where that discourse is coming from. Like on the defensive side, I see it's not there yet. And, you still have to have a little faith to it. And you can decide for yourself as a viewer how patient you want to be. But like, I see a direction on the defense. Like I see a way forward, right?
Yeah,
like
me too.
I see at outside linebacker, a true freshman who they want to play and who I think would probably have played, 100 snaps already. Well, maybe I'm being maybe 70 snaps.
Okay, fine, 90.
Yeah, but I mean like maybe 60. I don't know. But like, I think he was a guy who would have been in the rotation. And you would have seen a way forward there. I think, you look at the secondary and you have a true freshman who very much looks like he's going to be the part. You see growing pains. Like you don't react when you see him beat, when he gets picked in a crossing route. Like, hey, true freshman, that's going to happen. That's okay. Thrust into the spotlight, blah, 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 blah. Like you see a way forward there.
or see him get handled by Jacoby Lean.
Yeah. You see a true freshman defensive lineman playing, 5 to 10 tackles a game in the first 3 games. Doesn't happen very often. Okay, there's a way forward there. The struggle, I think, is offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Because, so you've seen 2 transfer quarterbacks come in who basically kind of fit the same mold, I would say. Like, I think Mordecai, too many Tanners.
Whoa.
I think Mordecai was a little more their ideal in terms of he had an arm, but he had a lot of plus mobility and he could make a 15-yard throw, right? But he could run a read option. You could get a few rushing yards out of that guy. Tyler Van Dyke was a little more on the big arm side, less on the run side, but he could run enough.
Definitely.
But then you have Locke, who clearly isn't a quarterback who runs. And I don't get he doesn't have mobility. So what you need to build around him is totally different. And I don't know what LaCrue looks like, but I'm guessing it doesn't matter. And Matoyer, I guess, has some of that mobility, but more like in the Tyler Van Dyke mold at most is sort of the vibe I get there from what has been described. So I don't quite get what the plan is. And then Fickle this last week came out, and I have my second quote of the show, if I may, when he was asked about Van Dyke and what's the plans with the injury. And he said, quote, "We love Tyler. We love what he's done here. Hopefully there's an opportunity that if he wants to come back, he would have that chance. And obviously we would put a plan in place for that." So this was before this game. So this was last week, right? Already kind of, I remember when Colton came on the show and he had a really good way to describe it, how they were threading the needle on Braden Locke in terms of the 1A, 1B thing. And it was like, you need him because you need a backup, and his brother's in the next recruiting class. So you got to not alienate his whole camp. But at the same time, it's Tyler Van Dyke. And they went from that to something far more explicit. I mean, granted, you have he's got surgery, he's got all that, but that's certainly the way he's presenting that. I go, so are they punting on these guys already? Like, is he? I mean, like, I think that's a punt on lock, quite frankly, or pretty as close as you can get to it. And you have a passing game that's not really working because, quite frankly, I think they have a lot of receivers who aren't very good for them. They just don't work for them. I mean, CJ Williams, I think, he's there. You brought in Joseph Griffin, who's MIA, and the only guys they've recruited, right? Like the guys that they've brought in are KBJ and Tretch, and those are slot guys. And the problem this offense has is it doesn't have chunk guys. Vinny Anthony did it. He might be the best one, although I still think Bryson Green's probably a better receiver overall than he is. But like Vinny Anthony's playing out of position out there and giving them something. Bryson Green gives them bits and pieces here, but he looks much more like a complementary guy on the outside than the primary guy at this stage in his career.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But behind them, I don't know who the guy is. They haven't brought in a prototypical X. Maybe that's going to be Hilton, who's in the next class, but you're asking a true freshman to step in and be a starter. I don't know what you do. And the struggle, I think maybe that couples into this is I think they're still learning. Fickle and this staff was trying to figure out what exactly they can and can't do in the transfer portal. And I think it's becoming clear. And I mean, I'm learning about it because I really thought they could do more than they could at this point. But unless it's a guy that you had some kind of prior tie to, like Nizer Forkarine or a guy like Will Pauling, who he's a transfer, but they recruited out of high school.
They brought him from Cincinnati. Yeah.
It's depth and it's hit or miss, right? I mean, put the quarterbacks and specialists in their own pile because they're kind of weird, one off. But like from 2 years ago, I mean, some of these names, Quincy Burrows hasn't done anything. Jeff Petrowski, Jake Renfro, prior relationship. Joe Huber, prior relationship. But then Darian Varner, Nick Evers, Jason Maitre. I mean, Maitre played, but it wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire. Brandon Lane, Joseph Griffin, Joey Okla, Leighton Nelson, prior relationship. We'll see. But Jackson McGohan, Elijah Hills, Tackett Curtis, RJ Delancey, Jaheim Thomas. Like, there's a lot of
Jaheim Thomas prior relationship.
Relationship 1 year removed.
Yeah, in extreme form prior relationship.
But like John Pius, Terrell Henry, Leon, like I feel like Cheeks, who's kind of like poking around, maybe we'll see some of. But like I just feel like
Cheeks but Cheeks is also down to his top 5 included Wisconsin. You know what I mean? He's familiar with it,
But that's 2 years ago.
No, I know. No. I'm agreeing with your point, man.
Yeah.
I'm just,
So I guess my point is like
there's something else there. Like they're not bringing in juicy dudes.
I mean, I guess the way I
on
think
their own
that is evolving here is in the NIL world and in the portal world. I feel like their focus is going to have to be way more on high school evaluation and then retention of said players than trying to splash. Because think of it this way. What was the biggest splash they made in the portal? It would be Tyler Van Dyke. What was Tyler Van Dyke? He was the guy that Miami pushed out to bring in Cam Ward.
Yeah.
Wisconsin wasn't even in the market for that guy. Like they thought they'd be. That never materialized because they just don't have the NIL pull. Like they're a little more small market in the portal world than I think we realized. And as a result, you can't rebuild it that way. And the problem is, this offense right now I don't see how like this thing outside of, if you have a lot of, faith in Mabry Matoyer, that's great but you don't know anything there, but that's it. Like there's Mabry Matoyer, no real answers at wide receiver. They threw numbers at the running back position, but they never threw numbers at wide receiver, which is, I guess, the part that I am so confused by. I think they thought they had more out there than they did. And right now they have no real way to address it, right? Because look, numbers have been thrown at offensive line. They're going to graduate offensive linemen, but they have options next year. Like I see a path forward there. Running back, you're losing 2. They have 3 freshmen, one of whom is playing, who I think right now is probably odds on to be trading snaps with Yakimelli, right? Like, but I don't see that at a lot of the other positions. Yeah, he better be.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a whole on the offense. I see far more cohesion defensively in terms of how they step forward and how they change versus I do in the offense. And I think maybe if that's what's making you upset as a fan at this point, and you thought they were going to be 7-5, but okay, at least I see a vision, fair enough. But if you're just just upset because they're 2-2, don't be. That was a very long ramble. I apologize.
No, that's okay. You articulated a lot of points and thoughts that I would have made myself too. You know what it reminded me of though is I did want to say one thing that I know he's a good guy and good kid, but I'm done with Ches. Whatever he once had, he does not have anymore. And every time he gets the ball, I know nothing is going to happen.
I would say, I think what he is a larger part of, I definitely get the sense that Fickell is kind of in that, like trust your upperclassmen. He's very hesitant to pull upperclassmen. And I think he's very hesitant to, he's a big believer in chemistry and leadership and all those kinds of things.
Which I get and I really like and I really appreciate that. And I'm not, that is one of the things I think that is going to be Fickell's best asset is looking for that, promoting that, and succeeding at that. That's going to help this team succeed in this era of transfer and NIL. That's the thing that they're going to be able to have. And I think he's really good at that, but not like at some point you got to cut it,
I mean, I think you could say that with him. I think you could say that with Snaps with Cheney, Snaps with Jaheim. Like the three of them, I think it's fair to have that conversation about. You know what it is?
Just not effective.
I think.
And you have other options.
Yeah, you can be frustrated about it. Like I get it too, because I'm like, I mean, there's no reason for him. Like, I don't really get right now what any of them are bringing in terms of snap count numbers. I think it's just one of those things that's like, that's part of who Fickell is, and you kind of have to live with it. It was sort of like even, when Chris was really humming, you're like,
I could see that.
The 2-minute offense is just going to be what it is, and you have to live with it. You can complain about it, but that just comes with the package, right?
Sure.
I have a feeling that's part of the Fickell package to some degree, that you just sort of have to live with. He is going to defer to that sort of like leadership group and blah, 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 and the upper class guys.
I'm not sure that makes me feel any better, but it does make me less frustrated about it.
I mean, I guess
because at least I have a way to, you just gave me a way to look at it.
That's what I mean. Like it's
which I think is accurate.
It doesn't make you like it. It's just like it is, right?
But no. It's you have the first step to solving a problem is admitting a problem. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, so I guess
no, thank you.
We do have to touch on one other problem. Speaking of upper class leadership, before we move on.
Do we ever?
We got a request from Pancake
players.
Pete. Yes. There was the interesting thing about this has been a lot of grousing from former players. I think the most prominent one is the one that we were asked to talk about, which was Braylon Allen's tweet on Saturday, which was, "I'm gonna hold my tongue for now, but y'all gonna see me on a podcast one day explaining exactly what was going on my last season there," which of course he was talking about Wisconsin. Couple things. First off, where is he from? Isn't he from Milwaukee?
Fond du Lac.
Yeah, they don't say y'all.
Fond du Lac.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. No, I know. I was saying, Fond du Lac. I couldn't remember. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a lot of y'alls in Fond du Lac. I have a bone to pick with there's just not. I mean, the nationalization of y'all is wrong.
It's noteworthy, I guess. Yeah.
That's a big problem I have, but we'll move past that. Because I live in a you guys part of the country.
The majority of Wisconsin is definitely a you guys.
Yeah.
Or use guys. In some places, yes.
That's more North Jersey.
There's plenty of that in Wisconsin too.
But I mean, around here than you.
Yeah. Yep.
But
yep.
So we were asked. The funniest thing that I didn't keep the voicemail, but Pancakes Pete said, "Who cares what my opinion is? Your opinions really matter. First off, our opinions don't matter." I was going to point that out to Pancake Pete from his voicemail. But I guess it's like a lot of people reacted to it. And I did say, I replied to him. I said,
it's jarring.
I live 40 minutes from I know where a lot of the Jets players live. A lot of them live in Connecticut.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
I'm not far, Braylon. If you're listening, we could have a sit down. I wasn't kidding. I mean, I was not joking. We'll have a little. He's
got invites from many podcasts as well.
Yeah, he's not coming on here. But
I think, you're close and you're local.
I will come to him.
Yes,
name the place and time. We can sit down and have a conversation. But I don't really, whatever. I have no reaction to this. I roll.
Well, I think the funniest part of it, though, was it was within 60 seconds after the game was over, kind of thing.
Yeah, I know.
I know I quote tweeted it with the yikes emoji.
Yes, with the clenched teeth.
But yeah, I don't know. Who the H knows.
I mean, my take on it is perhaps Braylon. I know Braylon is, I am a running back and this is who I am. And I am in the mode, I'm in the model of Derrick Henry, speaking of a Bills Ravens game. And I don't think a Derrick Henry would work great in any air raid offense. Personally, I just don't. I mean,
it's probably the only offense he wouldn't. But
yeah,
yes,
Derrick Henry would find a way because he's Derrick Henry. But
yes.
A player in the style of Derrick Henry, I think there's a bit of a challenge, and it's maybe recognized. I don't know that he necessarily, like, if you compete at that level, you don't think of yourself as, I'm going to be in a better position in this versus that. It's more like you have to have a confidence in the mindset that you are going to be, exceptional no matter what. So, okay, there's that part of it.
Sure.
Also, I mean, like, he was the guy who said, peace out, can't wait not to see the 9-man boxes, like 2 days after Chris was fired.
I know.
So, I mean, there's a little, we don't need to read too much into Braylon's.
But Rich,
statements.
You know how old he is?
Yes, I'm aware. He's very young.
So
how old actually is he now? 20? Is he 21?
I think he is. I think he might have just turned 21 because I think his birthday is in the fall.
So, I mean, like, there were so many, I will admit, like, and he follows our Twitter feed, so maybe he listens, but like Chris James turned up in my
Oh, jeez, really?
Yes. He said it was
goodness.
karma for Paul Chris getting fired. And I was like, maybe, Chris, I don't know. But I was like, there's all these people coming out of the woodwork that I kind of like, oh yeah, there was a lot of remember that guy going on. I mean, I remember
I'm going to come back to karma in our big games here.
Yeah. So I have a thought here. Why don't you and I give our under the radar player of the game very quickly, and then we have to get to big games in the BUNG real fast because we are over an hour already, and Cody is going to murder us. I know we had a lot to talk about, but we need to refocus our energy. So
he murders us daily, but our audience pays him. So
exactly. So let's do that. That's enough on Braylon Allen. That's enough on that. Under the radar player of the game. Do you have one?
I have several.
Okay.
I've kind of gone around and round on this. I was considering Daryl Peterson even.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just as for whatever reason, I mean, it was kind of like, there was some effect on the game, right? And it's Daryl Peterson is the kind of guy that you expected to be a headliner, but he had some effect under the radar, right?
Okay.
I've considered Preston Zachman.
I think that's very fair.
He had an interception though, so I don't. It's hard to. Yeah. Austin Brown, who you said something about Max Lofi missing out. I thought this was one of Austin Brown's better games that he's ever had, and he might have had some mistakes, but none like he had in previous games. So I am going to go with Austin Brown, but Hills, Lane, even Kurt Neal, I think they're all worthy. But the one mine is Austin Brown. Okay. But Atticus Bertram's had a really nice game, but I don't think he's under the radar.
That punt was a little lucky because he definitely
just a tad.
Sculled that one.
Even still though, I mean, setting that punt aside, but he actually looked like he looked good. Like this is an effective punter. I thought it was markedly better than previous out.
All right. So Max, do you have our little sheet that you record our players of the game on?
I do, and I'm looking and I don't remember what we had for Alabama. I don't know why I didn't mark it down.
I don't either. Somebody in the audience respond and tell us. Because it's going to be really easy this week because you and I are in agreement. Mine was Austin Brown. The guy played 80 snaps. Like he was, I'm telling you, Austin Brown was, if Max Lofi was around, he was playing 10 to 12 in this game, and he showed out. I get that he got the roughing the passer penalty. I don't have a problem with that one.
Sketchy as hell, though.
Well, regardless, I don't have a problem with that penalty, and I don't have a problem with the pass he gave up because he was definitely doing things outside of, I don't know if I call it comfort zone, but what they ask him to do, and he really
outside of his normal duties.
Yeah, he did really well. He had some pass breakups in there. Solid.
Speaking of penalties too, take away the roughing the passer, which is debatable. He didn't have any other penalties. Like, would you he didn't have a holding? He didn't have pass interference. He didn't have any of that stuff.
No. The only thing I know
pretty good.
Is that either, I don't know, what is it? The line judge or the what's the one that's on the chains? They loved calling illegal formations in that game, and you're like, who are they calling off? Like, I don't see 5 guys in the backfield. Like, not to sound
I
like,
know there were a couple like that.
Yeah, as
That's the side judge. I think.
yeah, as someone who has watched a fair amount of middle school football, like there's one of those guys like every fifth game who loves calling that, and you're like, guy, it didn't change the play. Like he's lined up 3 inches farther back from the line. Like you want him just to point at the line and say he's on the line. Like that's the vibe I got from that one because I'm like, why are they calling me?
Rich, that is such a good transition to karma.
All right, so get to the big games of the B1G because I want to do this whole exercise, but we've gone too long. We'll save it for next week.
Minnesota recovered an onside kick.
Yep.
That was complete BS. that was called offside.
Yeah.
Talk about not affecting the play, but I didn't realize this. There was 1 minute and 37 seconds left in the game last year on the famous non-fair catch by Cooper DeJean that would have won the game at Kinnick Stadium. So it was 1 minute 37 seconds. And I don't know if there's a better example of karma on that than that. Like,
circling back. Yeah.
Right? I mean, like it's special teams, extremely low percentage successful play that, of course you're not going to recover an onside kick twice in a row.
Well, also, I think that sort of lends itself to that whole thing that, like, why I don't ever really get that engaged about officiating mistakes because they tend to
even out. Yeah, they even out. Yeah, it might take a season or two.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I mean, which is unfortunate, but that's just the reality.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Well, I don't know, but that I don't know. That was a pretty noteworthy game, I thought. I mean,
yeah,
Minnesota comported itself well.
Yeah, they came back in it. Really, what it was.
Yeah.
But the only question, we can do it quick.
Sure.
Because my thing watching the game Saturday and sort of consuming it and thinking about it. So there are 18 teams in the Big Ten now, right? Mm-hmm. How many teams in the Big Ten would you say are like, who are the bad teams? And what I mean by bad teams is like somebody who isn't, sort of 6-6-ish. Who you think like, oh, this is, and what I don't mean by that is so much the record, but like in terms of competence on a team, like who would you say that isn't? Like UCLA?
I was going to say, I can think of 3, Purdue, Northwestern, and possibly UCLA. I don't know if UCLA is quite that bad. But,
yeah, they are.
Okay. All right. I haven't seen them play.
I watched that Hawaii game and you're like,
oh, right.
Deshaun Foster looks like he did at the Big Ten meet, like the way they play.
That's fine. I mean, okay, Purdue, Northwestern, and UCLA.
Yeah, but do you have another one?
No.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
And I certainly wouldn't put the Badgers in that category, even though it's tempting. I do think what chance do you give them that they're going to lose this Saturday? Purdue at home?
I think it's pretty minimal. I mean, I don't think the firing of Graham Harrell makes it a harder game. I think it maybe is the opposite. They're not going to change anything in a week.
No, and I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of discombobulation too on offense. I mean, this should be a game where Wisconsin defense shines.
I mean, I think the reality of a firing like that, I mean, 4 games into the season is as much political for the head coach as it is anything like on the field.
The only thing I want to say about Graham Harrell is when I think of freaking Braden Locke, who was recruited by Phil Longo and retained by Mike Leach. Mike Leach, why can't we have Graham Harrell? Why can't we have Gardner Minshew or something like that? No, we get Braden Locke. All right, anyway, slight digression, but I wanted to say that one. I wanted to say that before, and Graham Harrell is going to be one of the people I used as an example.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because to
your point,
maybe the only one I'd say is close, but I think they're kind of around where the Badgers are, is Michigan State. Like, I think Michigan State and Wisconsin are on the bottom end of that, baseline competency scale I'm using.
Yes. Would you think differently if Michigan State had pulled that game out against BC and gone into this Ohio State game undefeated?
I mean, I guess. Well, no, they have 2 losses because they also lost to
Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland.
I'm sorry.
No. They beat Maryland.
That Michigan State Maryland game.
They
did not. No, that's Maryland's win.
No, Michigan State beat Maryland 27-24. And because Maryland has two losses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Michigan State is 3.
That's the one I keep forgetting about.
Okay. Sorry. I wasn't understanding. Because Michigan State's 3-2. They lost to Ohio State and they lost to BC.
BC, right. That's what I'm saying. Had they won BC, they would have gone into Ohio State undefeated.
Yeah. So I think, beyond that, I feel like every other school I mean, USC, Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa, Rutgers, Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, and Indiana. Those are all competent teams. Like the Badgers have a tough game against Rutgers.
No, they are. And I think the Badgers are as discombobulated as they are and as frustrating as they are. I think they're on a par with all those other teams with other teams on their schedule
outside
excepting Purdue and Northwestern. I mean, they shouldn't. They should be able to go toe to toe, and you should be able to, like, those spreads. If the Wisconsin's not favored in a home game, it's not going to be more than like a couple points.
I mean, assuming you're accepting,
I think Rutgers and Nebraska are going to be tougher than they have been in the past. But
are you accepting Oregon?
No, God, no.
Okay.
Oregon's interesting though. What do you think the Buckeyes are going to do to them in 2 weeks?
I don't know.
Oregon's interesting. Oregon's not being Oregon.
Oregon's not Oregon, but I think they're better than the Badgers, and I think Penn State is significantly better.
I'm not saying they're not. No, I'm not saying they're not.
But so are you saying? But what you just said, would you taking those two games out of the schedule? You're saying they're more or less on par with everybody else. You think?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Wanted to clarify.
And I just want to finish up that by saying that you have Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, SC, okay, that are ranked.
Mm-hmm.
But you know who else is ranked? Is Indiana. Which is interesting because Indiana's played USC and Maryland so far, and then, a bunch of other teams. And then Illinois is still 25. And the two mainstays in the 20s, the teens and 20s, Wisconsin and Iowa, nowhere to be found. What do you think of Illinois?
I think Illinois is solid, but unspectacular. Like, I don't think they have a very good quarterback.
Oh, you don't like Altmaier? I'd love to have Altmaier right now. I would be happy with Luke Altmaier.
I think if you gave me Luke Altmaier, but Luke Altmaier versus Tyler Van Dyke, I'd take Van Dyke.
That's interesting.
By the way,
I didn't
Indiana
see enough of Van Dyke to know.
Not important, but just so we don't get the emails, Indiana beat UCLA, not USC.
I thought that's what I said.
Yeah, that's okay. I
said
sounded
USC.
like
I
USC.
No. I meant UCLA. Yeah.
All right. So before we go, I want to do one bit of housekeeping from a purely selfish perspective. Everyone can stop DMing me asking if the talk around is closed. Just get your talk around in by 1:00 on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Like, think NFL kickoff, because that's about when they start getting cut up. Like, everybody,
your fantasy team.
It's like, yes, it's like, get your fantasy team in and get your talk around. Because everyone's like, is it still open? Is it still open? Is it still open? And like, my wife, like, I tend to hear a little window into the world of Richard Branch. And my wife and I go for walks Sunday morning. Like, that's what we like to do while the weather is still kind of warm. And she's like, why is your phone still going off? And I'm like, I'm sorry. It's people asking me the same question. So she's like, why don't you just tell them on the show? So thanks, girl, to wrap it all the way back to the top of the show. That was a callback.
Thanks, girl.
And then one other piece of advice is, if you want to, we can be texted there. And if it's easier, especially people who leave long voicemails, I'm talking about you, Lucas from Nashville, you guys can just send us voicemails that are attached to texts. They come right through. So it's all there. And it might even be easier than calling and waiting and blah, 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 blah. You can just send them there. So we'll find a way to use them, or you can email them to us, but that's kind of annoying. But that's an easy way to text them in. 347-77-BUCKY. That's the end of my
call text option.
Yes, that's the end of my self-interested housekeeping.
Nope. The only thing I will say is I'll be at the game in Madison. So if anybody wants to hook up and have a drink, let me know.
Maybe you can show Max how to call every hour to give us updates on his pregame activities.
I'm not doing that. I don't need to be shown.
I know. All right, everybody.
I'm just not going to do it. Cuts into my drinking time.
Exactly. On that note, until the next time, everyone.
Yeah, until the next time.
Enjoy the conversation? Head on over to buckaroundpodcast.com to find all the ways to connect with the show, links to our Patreon page, and feeds for every major podcasting platform. We want to thank each and every one of our patrons. You make this podcast possible. This has been The Buck Around, Badger football analysis from a fan perspective.